Hello, and welcome back to the Attractive Christians podcast, where we make Christianity a little less repulsive and a little more attractive and beautiful. I'm Annie, one of the producers. In this episode, Ethan answers a listener question about giving to the homeless, and he explains the meaning behind his new tattoo. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you like to listen, follow us on all the socials, and you can always connect with us by sending us a DM, or you can always Gmail us at attractivechristians@gmail.com.
I don't miss you anymore. Listen to Clyde.
Hello, Attractives. Look, I know what you're thinking. Ethan, why the heck are you wearing a tank top again? What is this? Some kind of Magic Mike thing? No, it's not. There's a reason for it. Just hang on a minute and all will be made clear. I hope. We'll see eventually when we get to the meat section. But for now, I hope you can put up with it because this is Attractive Christians. And you all are the most attractive listeners and viewers I've ever seen in my entire life. So welcome back to the Attractive Christians podcast. The podcast where we try to make Christianity a little bit less repulsive and a little bit more attractive. So hopefully this will be a good episode. I'm getting over a cold, so I might stop to cough a whole bunch of times throughout this episode. I apologize in advance to Annie, our attractive editor, and shout out, as always, to Mark, our attractive producer of this show. They're the reasons that you guys are seeing this. And I am Ethan, and I am so grateful that you're here too. So yeah, why don't we dive in with some crowd surfing to get things going?
Crowd surfing.
If you have not been here before, crowd surfing is basically where I read listener mail and then respond to it. All of our sections are named after heavy metal related things. So we got crowd surfing. We got headliners, if we're talking about the news. We got the meat section, where we talk about the meat of an issue. And then, what's our other one? Oh, doors open, which is kind of what we're doing right now. And then, I feel like I'm still forgetting one. Anyways, those are that's the gist of this podcast. So let's roll with it. We got a message from our boy, Andy. And he has a great question. And I don't know if I have a full comprehensive answer to this because it's a really good question. It's a big question. And there's a wreck mixed in. So Andy says, I spend a lot of time at coffee houses in my town. Same. It seems like homeless and mentally ill people gravitate to these places. Sometimes I help them out when I can by buying them food. Or I talk with them and tell them God loves them. My heart breaks for them and I feel helpless to do more. I do give food to my church's food pantry, but that's about it. I'm just wondering about your thoughts on dealing with the homeless and mentally ill as a Christian. What does the Bible say? I know this isn't a deep theological question, but it's heavy on my mind. Thanks, Andy. Well, that's about all the time we have for the show today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you later. No, I really love, the thing that I love most about this question, this particular, the way Andy said it, is that you just hear his heart come through it. And that's just so fantastic. You can tell that Andy genuinely cares, not just because he buys them food and stuff, but because he genuinely wants to do its best. And the very fact that he's asking this question, I think, reflects that he wants to do more than just give and fill someone's stomach for a day, but actually make some kind of meaningful change. So it's such an important question to be reflective about this and not just like, oh, we're just throwing him $5, you know? I have a lot of different thoughts on this question. There's so many different sides to it. Like, for example, it was either C.S. Lewis or Chesterton. One of them one time was walking down the street and there was a homeless guy, and C.S. Lewis or Chesterton just gives him like a £5 note, and they keep walking. And his friend who he's walking with says, you know, he's going to go use that to buy beer, right? And Lewis says, well, yeah, that's probably what I would have spent it on too, you know? So there's that side of it, which is like, do we spend our money better than people do if they use it for alcohol or for drugs? And obviously it might seem kind of flippant, but I think it also draws us back to reality to say, oh wait, there actually is a ton of useless stuff I spend my money on. I'm not perfect at spending my money only on holy and necessary and good things, right? A Netflix subscription. Is that good? Is it necessary? Do you need it? Or are you addicted to Netflix the same way the guy in the street's addicted to heroin? It's worth thinking about. Am I saying that they're completely equal? No, of course not. But are we actually spending our money that much better than the person in the street? How much disposable income do we have? And is everything that we buy necessary? These are important questions. And you'll notice that I'm starting by talking about myself first. What do I buy that I don't need? Well, look at my crib. You can see things. I'm sure that you could point things out. Do I need decorations? Do I need all these books behind me? I don't know. Do I? Or should I be spending my money on more useful, productive things? I don't know. It's just worth thinking about. And then, of course, I think probably the place most people's minds go with the question like this is the question of enabling. Am I simply enabling a drug issue if I just give money to someone? I mean, that's kind of like a really black and white picture. Like, I give them money, they just go buy drugs. I just help them buy drugs. I'm enabling them, right? And I do wonder too if even things, I got to be really careful with this. Could the things Andy does, even though they have the best intentions, could they also be more detrimental than beneficial? And the reason I say that, and here's where the rec comes in, I think everybody should read the book When Helping Hurts. It's a Christian book, but it is the most useful, well-researched book on this topic I've ever read. And he talks about one of the opening stories in the book is he was in a village somewhere in Africa or Asia, somewhere where there's just desperate poverty. And there was a woman and she just needed some antibiotics and they were $12 US, right? And so in his mind, he's like, oh, I'm here. This is perfect. Let me just give you $12 or let me just go buy the antibiotics for you. Boom, problem solved. But the question is, did that really solve the issue, or did it kind of perpetuate keeping the people where they were in a state and a mindset of poverty, of I will simply only always be the recipient of wealthier people's handouts? And he later in the book circles back to it and says, actually, what would have been more helpful, not that they need a white person to come in and kind of direct and orient them, but in a sense, having someone just to kind of encourage and uplift you in any way can do that. And he says, what I should have done, because I think he did buy the antibiotics for her, if I remember right. I have the book. It's down in my car, and I just didn't want to go get it. But he says, what I should have done is gathered this village together, all her neighbors, and said, who has $2? Who can pitch in $2? And kind of help them orchestrate how to solve the problem together as a community to show them, actually, you guys do have agency and you can solve this problem without the Westerner coming in and showing you how to do it, but encouraging them to lift themselves up and give themselves that kind of agency to come together and solve that problem in that instance. So he's reflecting on it and he's like, this is what I should have done. I should have done it like that, so that it's not just another handout they receive, because obviously a handout of antibiotics is incredibly useful. It's a good thing empirically. The lady's life was probably saved because of it. But, and I bring that up because obviously Andy buying food for people is obviously empirically a good thing. Nothing bad about that or about what he's trying to do. But is it perpetuating the state that these people are in? And in that book, they also talk a lot about how this was really interesting. If you asked a middle class or a wealthier person to state some things about poverty, they would say, well, you don't have, money, clothes, shelter, car, transportation, and they list off material things. And if you asked a poorer person or a person experiencing poverty to describe it, they would start listing off more emotional, shame-related things. Like, well, everyone looks down at us, and we don't have equality with other people, and everyone thinks that we're just trash, and we're never going to measure up. And they actually don't list material things. They list more emotional things. And reading that book really opened my eyes to how poverty is not just these people have more money, these people have less money. It's actually, there's so many layers to it. And to a poorer person, to an impoverished person or a homeless person, it's so much deeper in the heart and in the mind than simply, I don't have money, I wish I had more money. It's like, I'm not as good as those people that have money. They're all looking down at me. I don't deserve X, Y, or Z. Maybe no one ever encouraged them to be a good worker, that they can actually show up to a job, that they can be consistent, that they can be responsible. There's obviously, I don't mean to cast such a wide blanket either and say everyone's the same, but there are similarities among a lot of their experiences, and it's not just about the material things provided. And this is also why I think Andy's message is so hopeful and optimistic, because he doesn't just throw them the material things. He's saying that he sits with them and eats with them and talks to them and shares the love of God with them. What better things can you do, if you have 5 minutes with somebody? So I really love his heart in that. And I'm not really giving a black or white answer, do this or don't do that, because I don't know it all. I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing my 2 cents. What I would say is read that book, When Helping Hurts. I can't remember who it's by, but it's easy to find. It's a big best-selling book, When Helping Hurts. I think it's by 2 authors. I can't remember their names right now. But that book really opened my eyes to, here's why you shouldn't give the guy on the street $5. And it's not just because he might just go buy drugs or alcohol with it. It's actually so much deeper, because when you do that, like I said earlier, you're kind of keeping them mentally in a state of, oh, I'm just a recipient of people's charity. That's all I am, right? Like, your intentions might be really good in trying to give somebody something, like some material resource. But what it communicates can often have the opposite effect. And it's not because you're not trying to be helpful. I genuinely believe, like, I took this one student on a missions trip to Guatemala a couple years ago, and he literally, he had such a sweet heart. He saw all these kids, all these people everywhere we went in Guatemala, and he was just giving them money. He was just like, oh, this kid looks sad, or this kid looks poor, or whatever. And he would just give them so much cash, just like every time. And eventually I had to tell him, like, bro, your heart is so great and it's in the right place and you want to help these people. And that is so, so awesome. I love it. I love it. But what you might be doing might actually be not helping. It might be cool for a second to the kid, be like, oh, I can buy more candy now or something. But it's like, oh, this big white person is rich and they have the money and I'm just a person who receives handouts, versus actually lifting somebody up who has, or giving them agency and giving them their own means of helping themselves. So I think that's really what it comes down to, is helping people to help themselves, to see that there is a path for them to help themselves. And I don't know all of Andy's specific situations. I don't know if he's in a place where he can do that and invest more time and more effort and energy into that. If not, I don't think there's anything, I'm not an expert. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a meal with someone, buying them lunch, you know? I love when people do that for me, you know? But again, read that book and just see how different things can be at play and how it's so much more than just like, I don't know, they might use that money to go buy drugs. It's like, yeah, but there's so much more of the mental and emotional ties when it comes to poverty and it comes to all these things that we're talking about. So again, as always, such a great question, Andy. And I love how we can see your heart in it. It's so rich and it's so beautiful. Yeah, so keep that up. Whatever way you decide to go with it, keep that up. Keep your heart for the poor. I actually just recently was listening to Rich Mullins. I think I posted it on my Instagram. He had the biggest heart for underprivileged people, and he actually spent many years of his life on Native American reservations because he said, you know, when it comes to the United States of America, these are some of the poorest people and the most forgotten about and neglected and overlooked people in our country. And so he would just go and live with them. And he was often just barefoot, wearing a t-shirt. You know, he had millions of dollars from all of his record sales, but he was just living with the poor people. And in this message, I shared a clip of it. He said, you know, Jesus, it is not a secret that Jesus loved the poor. And even in the Old Testament, you see that God loves the poor and the alien and the outcast. And this is who he spent his time with. And this is where he tells you repeatedly, sell everything you own and give to the poor. Be with the poor. Join the poor. You know, help them. Give to them. So there's clearly that imperative in Scripture. But I do think you just want to do it well. You don't want to do it in a way that does more harm than good. And that's why that book is so beneficial. When Helping Hurts. So check that out. Yeah, I think that's it for crowd surfing and kind of Rex. So let's dive into some meat.
Meat.
So the meat will also kind of be a rec. So I kind of have like two half recs woven into this episode. So the meat and the reason I'm wearing a tank top is because of this new tattoo. Wait, did I talk about this? I don't think I talked about this new tattoo yet. I don't think. If I did, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. But the new tattoo is right here, and it says Omelas. 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 And a lot of people will notice it lately, and they'll be like, oh, why does that say omelets? Why does it say omelets? And I'm like, no, it's Omelas. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And I said, well, I'm so glad you asked, because it's from a short story. It's only 5 pages. You can read the whole PDF online for free. It's by Ursula K. Guin, I think is her name. She was a science fiction writer and a really, really brilliant woman, it seemed like. She passed away, I believe, in 2017. But she wrote this fascinating story called Those Who Walk Away from Omelas. So Omelas is the name of this town. And in this town, everything is perfect. So all the people live in perfect bliss and ecstasy, and they have rewarding work. And she makes a note, she's intentional to say, they're not dumber than you. Because often when we think of utopias, we think of just dumb people just dancing around, going like, ah, like kind of like SpongeBob, you know, like, ah. And they're just dumb and happy. But she says they're not dumb. They have rewarding work. They're intelligent and they work well and they play hard and they just have this perfect town. Everyone lives in harmony. There's no strife between neighbors. There's no injustice. There's no poverty. There's no nothing. Everything is perfect and it's utopian, right? Except for some reason, the way this town is set up is some people sometimes will choose to go and look at this one closet in this town. And in this closet, you go and you look at it, and you peek inside the closet, and there's a child, and this child is naked, and they're on a dirt floor, and they're crying, and they're in filth, and they haven't been washed in years. They haven't been touched in years. They're probably 5 or 6 years old. You can't really tell if they're male or female, she says. And it's just kept in filth and agony, and it cries out, and it says, help me, let me out, please, I'll be good. And she said years ago they would say that, but now they've kind of lost language because no one has talked to them, no one has touched them. So in other words, this child has just been kept in perpetual torment and agony and filth their whole life. And the secret to Omelas is somehow, because of the way the system of the town is set up, everything for thousands of people's lives is perfect, except for this one child kept in perpetual torment and agony. And somehow the town is set up that if you were to rescue the child, everyone else's life would fall apart. The infrastructure would crumble. The justice system would crash. The economy would collapse. Everything else falls apart somehow. It's fiction. But the question is, that she kind of inadvertently implies to the reader, is what would you do? Would you rescue the one child so that everyone else has a ruined life? Or do you let the one child suffer so that thousands of people's lives are good and perfect and happy, right? Including other children, right? All these other children, hundreds of children, have great lives because one child is kept in agony. And she ends the story kind of in this haunting paragraph. And she says, there are some people who go in and they look at the child and they just start walking straight out of town. And you don't know where they're going. You just see them leave and they just walk away. And they never look back, the ones who walk away from Omelas. And earlier she had mentioned that some people go in and look at the child and then go about their days after seeing it and just try to forget it. They try to forget what they saw inside that closet. And they just kind of pretend that, oh, I never saw that. That didn't happen. That wasn't real. Others just kind of think about it and they recognize how terrible it is. And they feel really sorry for that child, but they're like, well, the one has to suffer for the many. And then there are those who look at it and then walk out of town because, they couldn't rescue the child. So they leave it. They leave the town altogether. They say, I don't want to be a part of a system like this. So that's kind of the gist of the whole short story. And it kind of makes you ask yourself, what would my response be? Do I go on living in this utopian society and enjoying the benefits of it, recognizing the sacrifice of this one child? Do I walk out of town? Do I try to save it and ruin everyone else's life? What do I do? So I was just fascinated. I was sucked in by that idea, by that story of what do you do if you're in Omelas? And I have so many thoughts on this. Because for one, where do you start? I think that, you think about that, and I've told this to some people who asked me about the tattoo, and they're like, oh yeah, I would rescue the child. It's definitely worth it to save the one child and everyone else's life fall apart. And I'm like, would you, give up your perfect life for that? And here's why that response is so interesting. Because we do live in Omelas. And the people who don't recognize that, it might not be their fault. I think they might be ignorant, but we live in Omelas. This is not a secret if you've actually been paying attention, because we live in a society where the clothes that you wear probably were made by a child in a sweatshop or some underpaid woman in a sweatshop. And it wasn't her choice to be born in that country, poorer than the US, and to work in a sweatshop and be underpaid, but that's where she's kept. And a lot of these people are in indentured servitude because they can't pay their way out of the hole that they're kind of born into. So they work in these overheated, dangerous, no ventilation types of systems to make clothes for people like us. Who mines for our cobalt, which is the chemical or the mineral that keeps our phones and batteries and laptops and cameras charged? It helps them keep their charge longer. And it's one of the hardest minerals to extract out of the earth, so slaves are often used in Africa to pull it out of the earth in these cobalt mines. And that's in your iPhone, that's in half the stuff you use, right? You know, what about your food? Who picked your fruit? What about your coffee or your chocolate? You know, unless you've gone to the drastic measures of finding out where exactly every single thing in your life comes from, you're probably living in Omelas. And there are children or people who have provided for your life so that you can have the relatively comfortable life that you have at a cost of human suffering somewhere else in the world. But we have the benefit of never seeing them. We don't have to look at them. We don't have to go into the closet and look at the child, you know, who's kept in the filth and the agony. We don't have to. We have that luxury. We can just stay in our air-conditioned homes and order everything from Amazon, which is made in these terrible conditions. So we live in Omelas. That's where we live. It's not fiction. And if you think about it, if you rescued every single one of those people out of poverty and gave them real wages, the rest of our lives wouldn't really work the way they do, would it? We would have to pay $13 just for a cup of black coffee, not a latte, you know? We would have to pay $100 for a t-shirt and not a designer one, just a normal one. You know, think about how much our lives wouldn't function if everyone on earth was paid a reasonable, fair wage and given equitable working conditions that are safe and not hazardous to their health. We live in Omelas. It's the reality of the world. And that's why I hate certain parts of the American culture that encourage people to look away from all that stuff going on. Because otherwise, you're just the person who says, oh, I hear there's a child suffering in my city. I'm not going to go look at him. That's probably made up. That's probably not real. I don't want to go look at that. Why? Because then I might have to do something about it. Then I might have to change the way that I live. I might have to leave the comfort and shelter of my own luxurious life and do something about it. We live in Omelas. Me too. I benefit from it. I'm not pretending that I am better than anyone else. I try to shop more sustainably, meaning buy less. You know, there's the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And somebody told me once that they're put in that order for a reason, because we should first try to reduce, the opposite of the American motto, right? The American motto is more, 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 buy more, buy more. You know, you need more. You need this thing in your life. You need this. But reduce, and then reuse, and then recycle, right? How good are we at any of those things? I can tell you most people I know are not good at reducing. You know, I watched the Netflix movie about Amazon called Buy Now, which, surprise, it wasn't one of their best rated movies, but I thought it was fantastic and really a wake-up call. It was really well done. It was really jarring about how much more stuff has been produced in the last decade than ever in history past, because Amazon, primarily because of Amazon, wants you to just buy. And they try to make it as frictionless as possible for you to buy as much as possible and just own as much as possible, whether or not you need it. And newsflash, you probably don't, but Like, I was just talking to somebody at work the other day, a middle-aged person, and she was like, I took last week off and I used it to reorganize my basement, to clean stuff up and throw stuff away. And I said, in my head, I was just like, that's how you spend your week off? Organizing the stuff that you have in your basement and throwing stuff away? Like, you have so much stuff that you have to spend a week just to organize it? Is that what you wanted for your life? Like, when you were a little kid, were you imagining, gee, I hope I just have so much stuff I can take a week-long vacation to organize it? Not go, sail around Jamaica, not go swimming in the Mediterranean. I got to organize the stuff in my basement. That's America. Like, right there. If you ask me, that is America. It's, I need more, I have to buy more, and then spend more spare time just to organize the stuff I already have. That's Omelas. That's America. We live in Omelas. This isn't a mystery to me. Yeah. And this is coming from someone who has seen that kind of poverty firsthand. I lived in Guatemala. I lived in Thailand for 2 months. I lived in India for 1 month. So I guess you could say visited, lived, whatever. And I've seen those people. I've seen the sweatshops. They're not just imaginary words to me. They're people. They're humans like you listening to this. So to me, I feel like maybe that's why I'm more passionate about it than a lot of people I know. Don't even get me started on diamonds. Like, there's no way in heck I'm buying a diamond with my money, even if it's ethically sourced. Because if you buy it, you just perpetuate the demand for it. You keep the prices jacked up, and you keep the people in Africa enslaved, and you keep the militias funded. That's the reality of the world we live in. That's why I'm never buying a diamond. But like, all these things, like, people, Americans typically just don't care. We're the people in Omelas who just, maybe you saw the child, maybe you didn't, and you just go about your life being happy and content and comfortable. And so that's kind of why I got this tattoo, because it's a really interesting thought experiment. If it was that blatant and in your face, what would you do? Would you stay? Would you leave? Would you rescue the child? Would you overthrow the entire system? What would you do? But 2, it's a reminder, having it here, that we live in Omelas. This isn't fiction. This is the world we live in. There are children and adults who are suffering. There's even like elderly people who still are forced to be in these positions and work. Even though their joints don't work anymore and they should just be chilling, they're forced to work because there's the demand, there's the injustice, there's the system that is set up that is just so unhuman. It's anti-human. It's against the image of God. It's opposed to it. And the fact that Christians can just know about this stuff and go on with their life and not really give that many rips kind of tease me off sometimes. It kind of cheeses me off. So that's kind of a rant. And I'm sorry for ranting. And actually, I guess the 2 stories today kind of did go together. Because on the one hand, there's this massive issue. On the other hand, what do you do about it? Because when helping hurts is also a real thing. What do you do about it? You buy less, reduce, be careful where you buy from, like Shein, Temu, all those websites where you can buy like a shirt for $2. Probably not ethically sourced. In fact, most clothing that you can buy, probably not ethically sourced. And that's why I get almost everything from thrift stores in my life today. Yeah. I think as a Christian, there's so many verses where Jesus says, you will be held responsible for what you were given and what you did with what you were given. And that includes your money. That includes how you spent your money. how you used all of your resources. Were you just frivolous and ignorant and I don't care, I'm just going to get more stuff for me? Or, were you like thoughtful? We're not perfect and we live in a very imperfect system, but I think that there's the intent of, man, I really want to spend better, to buy better, to do what I can to fight injustice with my wallet. How will you do that? That's one of the best ways you can. Most of us, realistically, are probably not going to go and move to Vietnam or Thailand or Guatemala or Honduras, wherever. So what can you do instead? From where you are, what can you do with what you've been given? I think this is what the parable of the talents is about. That parable is, you've been given this. Now, what will you do with it? And this is your time, your money, your resources, your skills, your gifts, your words, your everything. What will you do with it? Will you just bury it in the ground and never let it grow or be used? Or will you be responsible with what you've been entrusted with? So anyway, that's kind of my rant. I feel like I could keep going on and on, but I want to end with a hopeful note, which is there is so much we can do. If you're listening to this, you probably do have resources because you probably have the internet, right? You can afford a phone or a laptop or whatever. So you probably have resources. There's things that you can do. You can make a difference. We recognize that we live in Omelas. We live in this broken system. Things are fallen. Things are broken. Things are painful. But we have agency. We can research and find out ways to help and to give and to make a difference with our lives, with our resources, with our money, with our time, whatever that looks like. So I guess this whole episode just kind of had one theme. Read When Helping Hurts. Look locally where you can pitch in. Look globally where you could contribute to, like International Justice Mission, Compassion International, things like that. And maybe just be one of the Americans who actually does give a rip, because I think giving rips is what Jesus would do. He gave lots of rips about the poor and about the victims and the oppressed and the outcast. So anyways, I hope this is helpful. I hope it's motivating. I get angry at myself sometimes when I look at my own life and I'm like, what are you doing? Why did you need that? You could have done so much better. But hey, that's what grace is for. We're all in this together. And so anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that you all stay the most attractive listeners in the entire podcast sphere. Thanks again. Thanks to Annie and to Mark. And thanks to you guys for listening. Stay attractive, models. Love ya. Bye.